This KFAN podcast is sponsored by Builders and Remodelers, exclusive Twin Cities provider of Elements Windows. Get the highest quality windows at unmatchable value. Visit buildersandremodelers.com for more details.
Our Target Center location today. Already a decent amount of activity because it's not a late game, right? It's a 7:30 start, and as Johnny reminds us, there's no game in front of ours. This is the only game tonight, I believe.
Standalone
NBA playoff, as we like to say in the business. I'm wondering how much your average Minnesota Timberwolves fan is paying relatively close attention to the Knicks-Celtics series because of our connection to the Knicks. Is it, no, it's done. He's gone. Cat's gone. I don't care. Tibbs has been gone even further. Or is there a little extra, where you're kind of paying attention to the thing that the guy on the other end of the deal, I mean, we still, especially if the Wolves win tonight, will still feel pretty good about their chances with the trade and moving forward again, especially with a little help from the basketball gods on Steph, potentially. But, because to me, the feeling on Towns should still be pretty good. And I think
here,
there were people, he had his detractors. We talked about that and some of the stuff that drove us all crazy about Cat. But now that the Knicks are in prime position, now it's not over. I still wouldn't be at all shocked if the Celtics won the next two.
Right.
But the fact is, nobody saw this coming, right? That the regular season, the Celtics destroyed the Knicks. We talked about that earlier in the week. And yet here we are down. They're now down 0-2. Very similar games, blowing 20-point leads, allegedly for the first time in the history of the playoffs that any team, home team, has blown 20-point leads in consecutive games.
Well, first of all, it's amazing that the Wolves and Celtics continue to one-up each other in three-point ineptitude. Yes. Like every other night, the Celtics just broke our record, and then we had the two-game record, and now the Celtics have obliterated that. I tweeted out yesterday, if they meet in the finals, we're going to need new rims at halftime, just with all the bricks. So it's Amy Hockert's nervous. You can tell. She's very nervous.
She's been nervous and cranky since the game one ended.
She's very nervous. Yeah. What are we talking about again? But with the Carl angle, I'll just use my house and my high school Minnesota guys group chat. We're all in on the Towns thing. Everybody's locked in on the Towns thing. And it's interesting to see how he's being used, how he's being portrayed.
Yes.
You've talked about people talking about him disappearing in the fourth quarter. Well, they all disappear until they don't. Brunson rarely gives up the ball.
Correct.
And then when he does, those guys have to make the shots. And Bridges has made some.
Yeah.
And obviously Towns has had a couple of putbacks here. But it's interesting to hear and watch the perception of Towns, who played well yesterday.
He played very well yesterday.
And he's out there, and obviously he still does. He still picks up a foul that you wonder, why are you doing that? Game one against Horford, he was a complete debacle in the fourth quarter, trying to drive at him, not getting any calls. But I think a lot of people are paying attention, and the vibe should be good around Towns. I mean, he had a great year last year. We all know it. They don't win the Denver series, certainly Game 7 without him. He got he was good enough to get you the guys that are now helping you here.
Right.
So I think all the vibes should be positive around Towns. And it's interesting to see, though, the national perception of him and now people commenting on him now that he's with a glamour team and isn't playing a lot of the late defensive possessions. But neither's Brunson. Tibbs puts out all these other guys.
A lot of that, yeah.
And so it makes sense.
It is remarkable. We've talked about the, I think, over-the-top hyperventilation about Tibbs and running players into the ground and the minutes police stuff, etc. Because, as it turns out, thus far, the healthiest team in basketball, by far, are the Knicks. And you look at Cleveland, for example. I think, who's Cleveland's best scorer? The guy who used to be at Utah.
Donovan Mitchell.
Okay. I think Mitchell during the season averaged 32 minutes a game,
which
is low. And that's the new way. Keep him fresh, the whole bit. Well, it's funny because in the wake of Cleveland losing their first game of that series, what did their head coach say? Largely, I thought we just kind of ran out of gas. And then you say, well, why would you run out of gas? Well, maybe because you weren't prepared because you're used to playing just 32 minutes a game.
Right.
And the truth is, on a lot of injuries, they're really not a function of a coach running a player into the ground. They just happen. But it is funny because people want to pound on Tibbs on this all of the time. And no matter how many minutes he's played his main players, they're the least injured team in all of basketball right now. Everybody is indeed playing. And so, I don't know where people go on there's always another rip, I guess, on Tibbs because he's, we know how he's wired and he can be difficult at times to really get into. But the fact is, several other teams are fighting injury, and meanwhile the Knicks are playing, they're playing guys 42-4. And here's the other thing. There are other teams that are playing guys major minutes. Go back to the Lakers series with the Wolves.
Yeah.
Look how many minutes that, Redick felt like, I guess he had to play his players. So I'm hoping if the Knicks, if they unseat Boston, maybe get to then they would get to the conference finals or maybe even the NBA finals, that would put an end to that part of the story, because I just think it's been overdone on the basis of a couple of injuries. The assumption, because the game is really, the problem with the minutes police thing is every time a Tibbs player would be hurt, the assumption would be made that it's about the minutes. Right. When we know from several other teams on this playoff run that it's just people get hurt. Weird things happen. Is Steph Curry a function of minute issues? No, he pulled a muscle, because he moves around so much. So it is making what's happening, especially in the East, is making these playoffs far more entertaining and far more intriguing.
I love it. Well, and his guys are playing a lot of minutes. They don't look tired at the end of games.
No.
And it's not just because Brunson's hitting crazy shots. Their defense is unbelievable. Yeah. They're rebounding. I loved what Tibbs said about going on defensive runs. You can do that too in rebounding runs.
Right.
And that's really what happened. The Celtics are going to miss their shots. We know that. But the Knicks were just cleaning up on the boards. That included Towns. They were one and done. And then they'd come down and they'd run something. They'd score, come back down. They miss a shot. They get the rebound. It just kept building upon itself. They look fresh. And Paul Pierce says a lot of crazy stuff. We know that. He's walking to work today, I think, because of something he said.
Did he really follow through with the vow?
Well, he was walking at some point.
He said he was going to walk 15 miles to work in bare feet.
In a row,
if the Celtics lost game 2, which, of course, they did.
One thing he said, and I think we played it at the time, this was a couple of years ago, and this does make sense to me, that when they played, they also practiced, and you have to play basketball to be ready to play basketball. And Johnny just talked about it with the Warriors. You could tell they were a team that's been in the fire and knows the level that they just had to be at for 2 straight weeks. And we're at that level quicker than the Timberwolves, who kind of just eased their way in and then had nothing. I do think there is something to be said that you are always on that competitive edge. And could that burn you out at some point?
Absolutely.
Sure. But these guys are also on so much adrenaline. They're so well conditioned. They know, especially these older guys, know how to get themselves to where they need to get to for these playoff games. I'm all on board for everything that's going on with the Knicks right now. I love it.
Well, again, we're talking about with Johnny about how narratives change. It's the same, like I said, with the Knicks, where if the put it this way, the Celtics could still win the series, but if they don't, it's a complete change from before the series, which was the Knicks are basically, they're just not good enough to beat the Celtics.
Against the top 3 teams in the league, they can't win.
To beat the Celtics.
Yep.
And now it's going to look very differently, obviously, if they're able to pull it off, because it would suggest, well, no, actually, they probably were good enough. Now, the Celtics have something to do with that as well. And look, it's hard. We all overreact to whatever's in front of us, and it's hard not to, because we gotta fill time. And you think you have these bold declarations that kind of look good, but then again, starting with the Golden State Warriors, they change almost overnight, as dead as they looked late in the series against the Houston Rockets. I think it's bonus bucks time. Is that right, Gaarsdy?
We can give away some bonus bucks, and Kara can send us to break.
Let's do it.
The Fan and BigDeck.com wants to give you a shot to win bonus bucks with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword Bills at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword Bills. Enter it now at KFAN.com.
Target Center location, the Bumper to Bumper program continues. Don't forget, as I mentioned earlier, Craig Kilborn is scheduled to join probably about 5:15 this afternoon. If you'd like to reach us, Twitter, probably be X, the better way today. Not any direct connection with the Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN text line. So hit the X machine, Twitter machine, whatever you like to call it. And if you have any kind of Pope insight, Pope Leo, I've become absolutely obsessed with this story. I can't get enough of it after watching the wall-to-wall coverage today. There was one of those uncomfortable live TV moments. I don't remember which network I was watching. It might have been CNN, where the anchor was introducing a guest, someone who has great knowledge of and has spent much time around Pope Leo the 14th.
Uh-oh.
And as she welcomes the guest, there's this long pause, and he says, "I've never met him." He said, "I got some stuff insight I might be able to give you, but I've never met him." And then she did the old, "Well, I guess I was misinformed on that in my ear." They can maybe perhaps confused one guest with
that
another.
Would be bad for the producer.
It's very difficult.
That would be bad. That would be too bad. Well, that is the tough part about breaking news and surprising news. When something happens that's surprising,
they're not ready for it.
And you're scrambling, because I'm sure they did everything that we did yesterday. We had all those capsules of every candidate,
yes.
The betting lines, and so you're probably doing your background on that. We do that with coaching searches all the time, right?
No question.
If the Gophers hire Nico Medved, who are we having on? And you try to do a little bit of due diligence. It's tough when it's the Pope to find some background stuff there. And then when it's a surprise one like this.
Yeah, big one.
A wild card, an American, a Midwesterner. It's tough to find people on the fly.
You sent, there's already, of course, a number of shirts being suggested because he hails from Chicago, Illinois, including Go Hope Go, or Go, I should say Go Pope Go, the Pope in the Ditka style of the Bears. Sweet Pope Chicago might be my favorite. And then there's the little conundrum, grew up on the south side but cheers for the north side. There is the beauty there of that he picked Pope Leo, which meant he was going to be Pope Leo the 14th. And, of course, who's the most famous Chicago Cub of all time? Ernie Banks. And what number did Ernie Banks wear?
Yeah.
Maybe that's the real reason.
Could be.
That he picked Leo, because he gets to decide. I literally think you get to decide what your name's going to be. Now, I may find out differently from our guy Gerald Posner and others. He's also embarrassed. He flatly predicted 2 days ago on some national interview that the only certainty was that the Pope would not come from the United States of America.
That's why I was so stunned.
Yeah.
That's why I was flummoxed when I said, "What do you mean Chicago? That doesn't make any sense." I didn't even know we were in
Chicago, Spain?
Yeah. I didn't even know. Now, what do you think about this? I got this from a friend of ours. Chicago's top 5 right now.
Oh.
Number 5, Pope Leo. 4, Oprah. 3, Obama. 2, Jordan. And 1, Ditka.
Wow.
Do you agree with that top 5?
Oh.
Does Bill Murray need to be in there?
Yeah, see, I think Ditka has been out of coaching long enough that I'm not sure he's won anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not sure he is at this point. It's interesting.
He was for a while, though, right?
There's no question. I, for the moment, Pope Leo, I think, might be at the top of the list, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Now, that might
ahead of Oprah?
Yes, I think that might not last. And I was very disappointed in former President Obama, because he sent out, a message of hope and, peace and congratulations.
Yeah.
And, about, healing the world and sending out the right message for all of us, regardless of faith, whatever the case may be. And I'm assuming there's going to be a parenthetical, and, hopefully can, maybe get the Bears to actually have a quarterback who can, complete a pass every once in a while. Some kind of self-deprecating thing, and he wouldn't do it. I guess
too
he was
serious.
Too solemn and too serious.
Yeah.
And he's not even president anymore. I thought it'd be easier to be a little bit more, off the cuff.
Well, you saw Gerby's response, did you not? Carl Gerbstein.
I did not.
If this new pope is a Bears fan and they think that's going to help them win a Super Bowl, I hate to tell them that it isn't how that works.
By the way, some Golden State Warriors fans just passed by. Do you think they're real Golden State Warriors fans, or do you think they're doing it because it's fashionable?
I bet they're kids, so I bet they like Steph Curry.
The Warriors' colors are unique.
They're great.
Would you not agree?
Yes.
Yeah, they are very good colors, I think. No difficulty with that. I guess Curry, was it earlier today he met with the Jackals and spoke about his situation?
I know he was at shoot-around. I didn't know that he talked.
I think he talked a little bit, and he didn't give any indication about how long it's going to take. And I don't think there's any way to know. I think what the Warriors have said to this point, here's the Warriors' best hope, I think, realistically. Game 6 is 12 days from today.
Right.
So you say, well, that means he will have been out 14 days if the Warriors can get to Game 6. And the betting money is, and this better be this way from the Wolves' standpoint, that the Warriors are hoping to be down 3-2 heading into Game 6. And then you say, basically 2 weeks off, maybe that gives Steph Curry a chance. And we chip a chance. We take our chances down 3-2 with Game 6 being obviously there, right? And you say, maybe he can help us get to 7, and then all bets are off in a Game 7. Because I do think based on what we learned about the Warriors to this point, I would be I'm not saying the Wolves couldn't win a Game 7 here, but I also say the Warriors could win that game.
You don't want to get it to that.
No.
You don't want to be messing around with that.
Actually, don't.
Sam Gordon, who we had on a couple of days ago, our guy, former intern, covers the Warriors for the San Francisco Chronicle. He did speak after shoot-around to read you a couple of quotes. From all that I'm learning about how quickly you can get back, there has to be a healing process.
Yeah.
Said eventually there will be conversations about his readiness to return. Quote, I'm not anywhere close to that right now. I'm not rushing it. I know how tricky hamstrings can be, where they can fool you to think it's healed.
There's no question.
Even if you don't feel anything, I'll do everything in my power to get back as soon as possible.
If this is, I think everybody agrees, if this was an ankle injury, that's the kind of thing you can try to muck through if you have enough mobility.
You tape it up.
But but with a hammy, with that kind of pulled muscle, you can't. And it sounds benign, and it sounds like, what's the big deal? But the so-called soft tissue injuries are the most difficult. He hasn't had one, I guess, in forever. I think it was like 2018, I read, or 2019.
Right.
Been quite some time.
And never a hamstring.
You can't. Because I don't even think you can rule out the possibility he didn't play at all. For sure. As it is, what he's kind of saying is, I got to see. And then, I'm sure they have ways to evaluate after, 4-day increments or whatever the case may be, where you go, it's getting better, or it's not even close. I still can't move on the thing without feeling it heavily. And again, I don't think a hammy is one you can, quote unquote, play through on a basketball court.
You really can't. No, and not be effective. Yeah. I just know from my time with the Gopher football team, there have been a couple of running backs that have had hamstrings. And I just think about David Cobb, I know had one, the star running back. And he was good to go Friday night. He played the first couple series of the game the next Saturday. It was a Wisconsin game. It was a big game. Might have even scored a touchdown. But just in that second or third series, opens up a little bit, hamstring pulls again, and he's done. That's the thing. Your hamstring can feel like it's ready, and then you get out there and you pull it again, and you're done. So it's a very weird injury.
I'm chuckling because I just got a very amusing text from Rick Bozich. Not only a frequent contributor to this show, my best buddy from college days, fellow Gary, Indiana native, and a confirmed lifelong White Sox fan.
He's bitter.
Who's done his own inciting and research on the notion that the new Pope, Pope Leo XIV, is indeed a Cubs fan. Only in Chicago could this actually become an emotional debate. An update there. A little bit more on the Wolves-Warriors series as well. And as I said, top 5 at 5 yet to come, and a visit on our location with Craig Kilborn as well. Don't go away. All right, so the big announcement today was we got the puffs of white smoke, and the new pope is named. And he's going with Pope Leo XIV. He hails from Chicago, Illinois. And I think it was on ABC News. You got to fill a lot of time. And one of the reporters or one of the anchors said, and, we're hearing he's a big-time Chicago Cubs fan. Well, that started the scramble that one would expect in a city like Chicago, Illinois. I'm looking at, for example, a photo offered up via the Chicago Cubs X handle.
Oh, boy.
congratulations to Pope Leo XIV, and then it's a shot of the Wrigley Field signage outside the building, the kind of iconic sign where there is a place to add an electronic message, and the message is, "Hey Chicago, he's a Cub fan," as one would expect. So on the basis of all that, I got a text earlier today from Rick Bozich. And he says, "New Pope from Chicago better be a Sox fan or it will show a lack of character." And I said, well, I did hear them describe him as a Cub fan. I'm not going to tell you what he said at that point because it's not a good
not
place
Pope
to go.
Friendly.
It's not. And then he offered up his name, and I started saying he was a big Leo DeRocher fan, an old Chicago Cubs manager, etc. So just within the last 15 minutes, actually less, 9 minutes, he texts me under the headline "Debunked." And it's a passage from some story. And there's a quote from John Prevost, who I'm assuming is a relative of the new Pope.
Right.
The direct quote, "He was never, ever a Cubs fan." So I don't know where that came from. He was always a Sox fan.
Wow.
So in the interim, then, Bozich tweets out with this information. This tweet, not just moments ago. So the early reports that Pope Leo XIV was a fan of the Wrigleys were false. Typical media slobbering love affair with that team. Because there's a piece where, it's his brother. We sat down, it's WGN News, I guess, out of Chicago. We sat down with the brother of Pope Leo XIV at his New Lenox home. He tells us his brother loves Wordle, Words with Friends, and the Chicago White Sox. Tune in on the WGN News at 5. It is another reminder that it literally, all of this took off on the front end because of one comment from one commentator. And we make the assumption that, he must know something, or he read something that indicated he was a Cubs fan. And that's all it takes, even in 2025, for a fire to break out. Now, this one doesn't really have major ramifications or consequences. It's more fun than anything else. But that's apparently where we are here now. I don't know if that's going to be the last word. Maybe a cousin is going to say, "Not so fast, my friend. He actually liked the Cubs better than the White Sox." But that's how the story has evolved just in the last 2 or 3 hours.
So they won't be renaming it to Pope Blue Ribbon Beer at Wrigley's so fast. Could he do the 7th inning stretch? Could he can a Pope take me out to the ball game? I'm going to guess,
even if he's a confirmed White Sox fan, he's not going to get booed singing the 7th inning stretch. Is he? Are Cub fans that small?
You tell us. You're the Cub fan.
Actually, they might be. If he confirms that he's a White Sox fan, they might. And by the way, how about being a White Sox fan, as bad as the team is?
Yeah.
That in of itself is pretty extraordinary.
He's resilient.
Pretty astonishing, is it not?
He's resilient.
And maybe that's part of what's made him who he is. Maybe you'd say, well, that's how you get toughened up. Maybe that's part of the deal. I mentioned that we might have some surprises this afternoon, in addition to Craig Kilborn, who's going to stop by our location probably about 5:15 or so. And indeed, one of them has now hit the spot here. I thought, Alan Hortan, the rumor was you had still too much prep to do for tonight's radio broadcast for you to be a part of our discussion today. What changed?
I think what changed was coming in for game one, the traffic on the 35W was abhorrent. Ooh. It was a longer than expected, which gets you stressed. When you're trying, anybody knows this, trying to get to an appointment.
Yes.
Well, I've got to coach at a certain time. And so you start to stress a little bit. So like tonight, I thought with the game an hour earlier and the way the traffic was the other day, I am in big trouble. Yeah. But today it was,
it flowed, huh?
It flowed. I don't quite know why, but, smarter minds than us have the answers to those questions.
So here we are. If we go back to game one, by the end of it, how gobsmacked were you at what took place?
Yeah, it was really it was a beatdown that the Wolves took that we haven't seen a lot of this season, even in the regular season. I mean, the offense was that was the lowest offensive rating for any game the Wolves have played all season.
All season,
88 games, and so that was it was you're used to seeing runs. 48 minutes is a long enough game that at some point your team or the other team is going to make some kind of a run.
No question.
And the Wolves really only had, I don't even know if I'd consider them runs, just little bursts.
Yeah.
But every time the Wolves got to within 9 in the fourth quarter, and they got there 4 times, every time the Warriors just executed down the stretch. I thought they bled the clock really well, too. Oftentimes that can get you in trouble if you start playing the clock. But when you got Jimmy Butler and Buddy Hield playing at the rate he's at, and I thought Draymond Green, for all the antics and everything we kind of talked about, when you face a Draymond Green-led team, the flagrants, the technicals, all the talking to the refs, I thought none of that showed up in game one. Yep. And when he doesn't
do that...
It's
very disarming.
Yes, it is. You're almost like, wait, I was expecting this, and it's not here. And when he does not have any of that stuff, he's actually really good at basketball. And he's the key to that defense, Dan, which has been number one since Jimmy Butler came aboard at the trade deadline. He's so smart defensively. He's not the quickest, the fastest, the biggest, but the smarts, the basketball intellect. And the other thing that jumped out to me was, having seen Jimmy Butler in a Warriors uniform for the first time, it looks like he's been in that system for maybe 10 years. I think that speaks, again, with all the extra baggage that Jimmy comes with.
No question.
When you boil it down and there's a focus and all that other stuff goes away, he's really good at basketball. And he looks like he's been in that system since Curry and Thompson and Green have been there.
There's no question. And, I thought it's a really good point on Draymond. And I said that nothing takes the starch out of the hatred in a crowd more than Draymond concentrating on the basketball stuff. Yeah. And the one time I remember him fouling Ant headed the basket kind of hard, he held him up.
He did.
It wasn't he shoved him to the ground, he held him up.
We had none of the stuff that we were anticipating. Yeah. Even when Julius Randle helped up, he knocked down somebody in the corner and helped. Right. Was it Jimmy maybe?
Might have been.
And it was just sort of this respect for one another. And hopefully...
Now that can change on a dime with Day-Day, right?
I think it's just a matter of... I think it's just a matter of time. Right. It has to be. But though the boos didn't get as strong in the third or fourth quarter when they were just the Warriors were just focusing on basketball and eating out that clock and playing with the lead.
So in terms of, you mentioned the Wolves' offensive efficiency, the worst of this entire season and postseason, is it what the Warriors did? Was there something specific about their defensive approach that was a big piece of that? Was it the Wolves self-destructed? What do you see looking back?
I think there were a lot of different factors that go into it. You could say there was a little bit of rust, and the time off may have hurt the Wolves offensively. You could say there was some carryover from Game 5 where the Wolves didn't play that well offensively, especially with the shooting. I mean, they dominated on the offensive rebounds and getting to the free throw line, doing a lot of the little things. So there may have been some carryover from that. I tend to lean into the fact that Golden State is a completely different team than the LA Lakers. I think it was a big adjustment going up against a team that works together, especially in the defensive end of the floor. They play together, whether it's man-to-man or that 1-3-1 zone. They're on a string. And like I said, with Draymond Green, when he's focused on basketball, orchestrating things, Jimmy is so smart as a player as well. I just think that was a big adjustment, all of a sudden seeing a team that's so dialed in defensively, where I thought the Lakers were not, with the exception of Game 2, which they won.
So is the key tonight, as much as a defense can, trying to take Buddy Hield out of this game?
He has, you can't read much in the regular season because the 4 meetings happened before Jimmy. But in the 3 wins that Golden State had, Buddy Hield was a big-time factor. Like, big time. Like, Steph is Steph. He's going to get his 30 points, 9 assists. Draymond did his Draymond Green things. But it was Buddy Hield who averaged about 19 points and shot almost 50% from 3. And he's now had 2 straight games, the Game 7 against Houston and now Game 1 against Minnesota, where he's had his 2 best postseason games. He hasn't had a big sample size, only the last 2 years. But when he's hitting shots like that and his movement, I thought his movement was really good. I thought Golden State offensively moves so well. And they did it for 48 minutes all the way through, because they've got guys that even when they find a mismatch and Jimmy's posting up on a smaller defender, most times he's still looking to pass out of that. It's getting an easier shot off of that rather than him taking advantage of the matchup. And so I think, going back to Buddy Hield, I think he's a big factor. I wouldn't even call him an X factor because that probably does him a little discredit. He's really good. And Buddy is amazing because I think when you have him on your team, it's a real roller coaster.
Yeah, it is. It's very up and down.
And Golden State fans have experienced that as well, because he's been really good at times, then he's disappeared at times. He's been in the starting lineup. He's come off the bench. But we saw that with his Sacramento days when he came in here, and there was that big Sacramento comeback where De'Aaron Fox missed the free throw at the end.
That's good.
He had 42 points in that game. When he's on, he is scary because that 3-point shooting is why he keeps getting an opportunity, why teams are willing to risk that roller coaster ride, because when you catch him on one of those hot streaks, I'm not sure there are many guys hotter in the league that can ride that in a particular game, and now game to game.
Steph obviously is not available tonight, probably not going to be available the next 3 or 4 games. We'll see how that goes. Jaden is the guy we like to put on Steph. So does Jaden, are we going to see more of him on Buddy? What do you think the plan is for him?
I think so. I think you put your top point of attack defender on him and give him similar Steph treatment. I mean, I think you have to after this last game. He shot so well in the second half. And even in the first half, Buddy did not produce a lot, but he was like a plus 20 in the first half. And even when he scored a ton in the second half, he was only a plus 2. So that was kind of, sometimes the numbers are a little weird. You'd think it'd be the opposite. I think Jaden does slide onto him. And that's one of the big storylines, I think, heading in. No Steph Curry for the foreseeable future. And listening on the way in, I'm with you, Dan. I don't expect that he's going to be playing again in this series. So at least for the next 3 games, but possibly the whole series, how much does that affect them? Can Golden State play the way they played the final 2.5 quarters without him? Can they do that over the next however long this series lasts? And that was my question after game 2 against the Lakers. I thought the Lakers played so well and so intense defensively, but there was a part of me was like, is that who this team is? Can they sustain that? And the answer to that was no. They clearly could not. Not with Luka and LeBron at his age and Luka's effort on the defensive end. So can Golden State keep playing that way? That's, I think, fascinating to see tonight.
You're around this team a lot. So, Johnny was here earlier, John Krasinski from The Athletic, and
I'm familiar.
I think you kind of know him. So he said, look, he felt all along the confidence level going into the Lakers series was very high among the Wolves' brain trust and the players. He said, I sense a little unease here because they already have figured out this team plays different. They're better in some ways. You mentioned a couple of those ways already. And that he does sense a different kind of tension. Now, as we said, maybe hit 7 straight threes, and the tension gets punctured, and everything can change in a minute, which is kind of what needs to happen sooner or later here. But what's your read on the confidence level and the tension question? Is there a little bit more unease this time?
I think there is, and I think there is because of that 3-point shooting. We have not seen this Timberwolves team has been a really good 3-point shooting team. They've benefited from the 3-point line all season. I mean, they are 4th in the league in 3-point percentage. They were 6th in the league in 3-point rate, which means their volume is up, their efficiency is up, and their 3-point differential is better than the Warriors, who are 1 spot behind them. They're 4th, the Wolves are 3rd. But the last 2 games, we have not seen a stretch like that. And even, I think, going back to game 2 against the Lakers, remember game 1, the Wolves shot 21 of 42. Yeah. And the questions after that from the Laker people was, well, Minnesota won't shoot that well again. They were right, but also the Wolves dominated in all the other facets of the game, so they still won the series in 5. But since game 2, the Wolves are only shooting 25% from beyond the arc. So it's now getting into more than just a game or a half or a quarter. It's multiple games. It's 5 games now, shooting 25%. And I don't think we've seen them go through that kind of a stretch together. The only player who is shooting well from 3 over this 5-game stretch is Naz Reid. He's right around 40%. But everybody else is under 30%, including Dante and Nikhil, who are really struggling off the bench. You just, and they've hit 1-3 a couple of times, and you're like, okay, let's see if that gets them going. But that's really been it. They have not been able to get going. And it's really weird that it's been most of the team, with the exception of Naz, struggling.
You had one of the stats you had via your X account was the number of open threes, which is considerable. So, if those stats are true, do you say you got to keep shooting them? You just have to keep shooting them, or is there a belief that you're going to have to moderate what you do a little bit, even if the shots are open shots, if you're in this stretch where, for whatever reason, everybody seems as cold as they are?
I think if it continues, then yes, I think you do need to think about that. And Ant has talked about that before in his own individual game, particular games. He'd be like, you know what, the 3 ball wasn't falling. I'm going to drive a little bit more. And I don't think it has to be a completely shut off the valve on 3s. You just have to adjust it and tweak it a little bit. But you're right, 50 over the last 2 games in which they have hit just 12 made 3s. and shooting 15%. 38 of their 76 attempts have been wide open. That's 50% of their threes have been wide open. You can't ask for, you could, but not realistically. It's a really high percentage. Right. And the numbers will eventually come around for these guys at this level. You get 50% wide open shots, you're going to finally get to about 40%, which is where the Wolves shot in the regular season. But it's certainly been the low end in these last two games, Game 5 against the Lakers and Game 1 against the Warriors.
So what did we see defensively in terms of the matchups on who is handling Jimmy, and what's realistic with him? I mean, is he more impactful tonight becoming the scorer, Jimmy, or is he actually more dangerous becoming the facilitator and orchestrator of everything the later we got into the game in terms of Game 1?
So he accounted for all 19 points of the Warriors' points in the fourth quarter, and only 7 of those he scored. So he assisted on 4 made threes. A couple of those went to Buddy Hield. I think you see more of that than him trying to make up for Steph Curry's absence and try to get 35 or 30 points. That's not how he operates. I think he's much more comfortable doing what we saw him do, which is flirt with a triple-double, setting up his defense.
Well.
He did not shoot
6 for 19.
And I think the Wolves' defense overall, and I'm interested to ask Chris Finch about this on the pregame show, is I think the Wolves did a very good job defensively.
I agree.
And if you can clean up 2 areas, the 18 offensive rebounds jump off the page. And even though the Warriors didn't capitalize on a lot of those in second chance points, it's demoralizing. It extends their possession time. I think cleaning up the defensive glass and then making them less efficient at the 3-point line, 18 of 42, especially when you're not shooting it well. That has to be, that's too high a percentage. There were too many open looks. They had 25 wide open threes, and the Wolves only average giving up around 19. So that's on the high side, especially for a playoff game. So I think those 2 areas, defend the 3-point line a little bit better, clean up the defensive glass. You got to attack those rebounds. That's something that you watch good rebounding teams, and Jimmy did this to close out. Was it one of the games against Houston where he attacked a rebound? I mean, just launched yourself to it. Yep. It's the definition of how you should not let the ball come to you. You've got to go to it. And that's been a theme with Rudy. And Chris Finch has talked about that. We need to attack rebounds. He's got the size to do it, even though they're manhandling him inside. I think if you do attack it like that, it'll be more obvious that some of those fouls are occurring, even though they're not called.
Alan Hortan stopping by our Target Center Skyway perch to chat Wolves Warriors tonight, which, of course, you can hear his voice via the Fan and, of course, the Timberwolves channel always as well. Anthony Edwards was the object of most of Finchie's ire after the game. Very direct, very calculated, very firm. I mean, it was. I think, even though it's not the first time he's gone up there, Anthony, I thought it was maybe the most intense way in which he's done that. So you're again around the coach, around Anthony a lot. How has he tended to react? Well, first, what did you make of that approach by Finchie? And secondly, how in the past has Edwards tended to react after games in which he has become sort of the object of the head coach's ire?
Well, as coach has said, Ant is very receptive to coaching, and he's receptive to being called out for certain things when it's warranted, and he normally responds really well to those type of things. And so I didn't make a whole lot of it afterwards. I think it gets the more public. It was kind of like Ant's comments after Game 2 against the Lakers, where he's like, I didn't know what they were throwing at me. I was confused by it. And yet, that he said that, and then it kind of got the headlines, and it really wasn't that big of a deal as the Wolves proved the next 3 games. And I think it's the same thing here. I think Ant would admit that 1 point and not scoring a field goal in the first half, probably on the unacceptable level. Obviously, there's a defense that's preventing you from helping you in those numbers, but he's got to find a way to be more aggressive. So I think he would agree, and I think he would quickly turn the page. And I think this is where Chris Finch and his staff have been so good too. Not only in preparing for series when you've got rest, but also dealing with adversity and coming off of losses. Because this is now the first time the Wolves are trailing in a series this postseason. They had a 45-minute film session yesterday in which Dante DiVincenzo said afterwards, nobody was hiding. It was everybody was fair game, and there were a lot of things that got called out. And then they get back on the practice floor for a shoot around this morning, get in that game plan, make some adjustments, and again, another great story. This is why sports are so great. Fascinated to see how they respond tonight. Fascinated to see how the Warriors respond without Steph Curry there. But I think it got blown out of proportion a little bit. But in the postseason, that's what happens. That's when you make those kind of comments. And Chris Finch does these for a reason, right? Like he made the comments about the Warriors fouling Rudy Gobert, and then Steve Kerr responds later in the day by saying, yeah, we're going to send our own clips. Steph Curry gets fouled all over the place. And I don't know if it was as much as the Houston series, because he was just getting bear hugged everywhere he went on the floor. But that's what coaches do. That's how they get their message across. Not that Chris Finch doesn't say the same things to Ant right to his face. So it'll be interesting to see how Ant comes out to play.
It's interesting because Johnny was saying that he believes a loose whistle actually works to the Wolves' favor overall, that this defensively, part of what makes the Wolves' defense good is it is physical, it is all over people. So if the old be careful what you wish for, if suddenly there's a tight whistle.
Because I think Jaden and Ant really benefit from that. They love to be handsy. I think they love to get physical. And you're right. You be careful what you wish for, because you certainly don't want everything called.
Do we want to run tonight? Do they make it harder to run? How much did we even try to run in the first game?
It's interesting. If you look at the box score, it says the Wolves outscored the Warriors 10-6 in fast break points. So it looks like, we got the advantage. Okay, those aren't high numbers, but you're still outscoring them. But when you look more at Second Spectrum is more of an advanced subscription-based site that a lot of teams use. You look at those numbers, and off the top of my head, it was the Warriors who scored about 18, and the Wolves were down around 10-ish in that area. So they judge transition a little bit differently than the box score. The box score simply goes first. And nobody can quite point to the numbers for first 6 seconds, first 8 seconds, first 7. I've heard that you can't technically get a fast break point off a made field goal. Even if you inbound the length of the floor and someone lays it up and in, they don't count that as a fast break point. So there's a lot of ambiguity, and I've been trying to find out for years, figuring out exactly what the definition of a fast break point is. But the advanced sites kind of look at it a little differently, where even a secondary transition opportunity is different than a half-court set. And so that kind of counts. So Chris Finch pointed to the transition. Even though the Wolves were up 10-6 in that category, they want to push it a little bit more. They want to win that advantage and do pretty much exactly what they did against the Lakers. Is when they have opportunities, man, you've got to make them pay. Golden State, however, much better defending in transition than the LA Lakers.
Last question. What's the crowd going to be like tonight? Do you think they're going to be a little bit tense early? Do you think they're going to hit the ground running?
It'll be interesting. Yeah. It'll be really interesting. I hope they come out fired up, and I think they have got to get some help from the team on the floor. It's tough to cheer when not a lot of things are going your way. The Wolves' largest lead was like 4 at the end of the first, and all of a sudden Golden State starts to dominate, and the Wolves only got to within 9 the rest of the game. So that makes it really difficult for. There were a couple of times where the crowd, even when Ant got to the free throw line and missed one, they all kind of came up. They were trying to get the Wolves going, but nothing seemed to work. So it'll be interesting to see how they come out tonight.
Were you surprised at all that apparently Craig Kilborn booed a decent amount when the offense was kind of stodgy and not getting anywhere?
Well, he's a guy that he wears his heart on his sleeve. And so, when the frustrations are mounting, he lets you know about it. And, hopefully guys can look at him and say, you know what? He's right. Let's get things going here. Let's be more efficient. I think the other thing offensively, Dan, that you're just watching back a couple of those clips, the Wolves have to be, against a really good defense, you have to make them work. And I thought they settled too often, even on the drive and kick. Sometimes that's not enough. It's not the drive and kick. It's the drive, kick, and the extra pass, or another drive, multiple drives in a possession. It's legal. You can do that. And you've got to make good teams work. And Golden State's really good defensively. There's no doubt about it. So the Wolves have to work extra hard to generate some of those better looks.
Great to see you. Thanks for making time.
You got it.
As always.
Talk on Sunday?
Definitely. Keep the tradition going.
That's Mother's Day. I know.
Well, that's a good point.
Yeah, but I think we did that last year.
Yeah,
too.
I think we did. Yeah. Outstanding. Thanks, man. Alan Hortan is the radio voice of the Timberwolves. Craig Kilborn is in the house. We can do top 5 at 5 first. I mean, he can participate in top 5 at 5 as well. He's versatile, isn't he? Well, we'll make it work. We'll figure it out. Target center cage location. Back in just a minute here on The Fan.